She always chose the last seat near the window, where the light was soft and no one paid much attention. From there, she could watch the schoolyard, the slow movement of trees, and the way students rushed between classes with loud voices and careless laughs. She rarely joined those sounds. Silence had become normal for her, not because she wanted it, but because speaking often brought comments she did not want to hear. Some said she was strange. Others said she was slow. A few laughed simply because laughing was easy. She came from a simple home, where money was counted carefully and dreams were not spoken out loud. Her parents worked long hours, coming home tired, their hands rough from effort. They loved her deeply, but they believed in quiet survival more than big hopes. At home, no one talked about talents or futures. The goal was always the same: get through the day, then the next one. She learned early not to ask for much. At school, she blended into the walls. Teachers saw her as average, maybe even less than that. When questions were asked, her eyes stayed down. Not because she did not know the answers, but because experience had taught her that raising her hand could lead to sighs or impatient looks. Some teachers spoke kindly, but their kindness carried low expectations. Others were blunt. They moved quickly through lessons and rarely waited for her to catch up. Music class was the hardest. It was supposed to be a place of creativity, but for her it felt like a stage she never asked to stand on. The room smelled of dust and old paper. Instruments rested in corners, many scratched and worn. The piano stood against the wall, its surface faded from years of use. To others, it was just another school instrument. To her, it was something more, though she never said so. During music lessons, students were encouraged to sing or clap along. Those who were confident were praised. Those who made mistakes became quiet targets for jokes. She learned quickly to move her lips without sound when singing. When asked to clap rhythms, she followed the hands of others. The teacher noticed her silence, but never pushed too hard. It was easier to focus on louder students. Whispers followed her more often than words spoken to her face. Some classmates thought she was boring. Others thought she acted better than everyone else because she kept to herself. None of them knew how much effort it took for her just to sit there calmly while feeling small inside. Every laugh behind her back settled somewhere deep, turning into something heavy she carried each day. There were moments when she wanted to disappear. Walking through the hallways felt like crossing a wide-open space with nowhere to hide. She kept her shoulders low, her steps quick. If she dropped a book, her heart raced, afraid of the attention it would bring. Even kindness made her uncomfortable, because it often came with surprise, as if she did not deserve it. At home, things were quieter but not easier. After finishing chores and homework, she often sat alone in her room. There was no television on most nights. She would stare at the wall or listen to distant sounds from outside. Sometimes she imagined herself in another place, one where she could speak freely without fear. These thoughts were brief. Reality always returned quickly. What no one knew was that sound lived inside her. Not loud sound, not noise, but something deeper. She remembered the first time she had heard a piano played properly. It was years ago, from a small shop near her home. The door had been open, and music spilled into the street. She stood there for a long time, unnoticed, listening. The sound felt like someone speaking directly to her, saying things she had never heard spoken before. Since then, music had stayed with her, even when she had no words for it. She tapped quiet rhythms on her desk. She imagined melodies while walking home. She felt emotions more strongly through sound than through speech. But she never told anyone. It felt too personal, too fragile to share in a place where she already felt judged. At school, the idea that she might have any kind of talent never crossed anyone's mind. Teachers spoke about potential using confident students as examples. Her name was never used in those moments. Report cards described her as polite and reserved. Nothing more, nothing less. It was as if she existed only in the background, filling space. There was one teacher who sometimes watched her closely, not with interest, but with confusion. During group activities, she followed instructions carefully. She never disrupted the class. Still, something about her distance made the teacher uneasy. Once the teacher asked if everything was fine at home, she nodded, forcing a small smile. The conversation ended there. Days blended together. Morning bell, classes, lunch, afternoon lessons, then the walk home. Each day felt the same. Yet inside her, something was growing. Not anger exactly, and not sadness alone. It was more like pressure, slowly building, waiting for release. She did not know what it was or how to handle it. She only knew that keeping everything inside was becoming harder. In music class, the piano remained untouched most days. Students preferred singing or using smaller instruments. The piano seemed too serious, too old-fashioned. She noticed how dust gathered on its keys. Sometimes, when the classroom was empty, she imagined sitting there, letting her fingers rest on the keys. The thought scared her as much as it comforted her. She believed that some people were meant to be seen, and others were meant to stay hidden. She had accepted her place among the hidden. That belief shaped how she walked, how she spoke, how she dreamed. She never expected anything to change. All she wanted was to survive school without more embarrassment. But life has a way of testing quiet people. Even when they do not seek attention, attention sometimes finds them. She did not know it yet, but the calm routine she clung to was close to breaking. A moment was coming that would force her out of the shadows she had built around herself. At this stage, she was still unaware, still sitting by the window, still believing that being unnoticed was the safest way to live. For now, she remained the girl no one took seriously. The one who listened more than she spoke, the one whose presence was easy to ignore. And yet, beneath the quiet surface, something powerful waited patiently, shaped by years of silence. Ready for a moment she never imagined would arrive: after school. The halls emptied quickly, leaving long shadows stretching across the floors. She waited until the last footsteps faded away before moving toward the music room. The building felt different then, quiet and almost alive, in a way that only silence could make. The noises of the day, the laughter, the teasing, all seemed far away. This was her private world, one that existed only when the door closed behind her. The music room smelled of old wood and paper, a smell that reminded her of hidden possibilities. Sunlight fell through tall windows, painting patterns on the worn floor. The piano waited in its corner, keys slightly yellowed, paint chipped in places, but to her it was perfect. She approached it with caution, almost as if stepping into a sacred place. Every day she sat there, she felt a mixture of fear and comfort, excitement and calm. She had taught herself to play in small ways. At first, she pressed a key, then another, trying to make sound without knowing what it should become. She experimented, learned by listening, and remembered the music that had touched her years ago. Her fingers moved hesitantly at first, unsure of what would come. But as she practiced, the hesitations faded, placed by a quiet confidence that grew with every note. There were no witnesses, no audience, no judging eyes. Only the piano and her thoughts. Sometimes she closed her eyes, letting her mind wander, imagining that the music could speak the words she never dared to say. Every note she struck carried a little piece of herself, pieces she kept hidden from everyone else. The music was her voice, clearer and stronger than anything she had said aloud. Days turned into weeks, and her skill improved. She learned to control rhythm, to balance soft and loud, slow and fast. She experimented with emotion, trying to make the piano express joy, sorrow, anger, or hope. She felt a thrill each time she realized that the sound came exactly how she imagined it. These moments were precious, giving her a sense of accomplishment she had never known before. At home, she kept her discovery secret. Her parents were busy, and she did not want to explain herself. The piano practice was hers alone, something she could not share. Sometimes she worried about being found out. If anyone knew how good she was, would they mock her? Would they expect more than she was ready to give? These thoughts added a quiet tension. They never stopped her from returning to the piano. One afternoon, a storm rolled in, rain tapping on the windows. She sat at the piano and let the sound fill the room. Thunder shook the walls, but inside, she was protected by the music. She played pieces she made up, melodies that twisted and turned unpredictably. The piano sang with her emotions, echoing the tension of the storm outside. She felt alive in a way she had never felt in the presence of other people. Her connection with the piano came almost instinctive. She could play without thinking, letting her fingers move freely, guided by memory and feeling. At times, she lost track of time, staying hours in the room without realizing how dark it had become outside. She knew she was learning more than just notes. She was learning patience, focus, and how to trust herself. Sometimes she left small scraps of paper with little notes or patterns she wanted to try again. She marked mistakes not with frustration, but with curiosity. Each error was a lesson, a hint of something to understand better. Her growth was slow but steady, built on persistence rather than talent alone. She had discovered that real progress came from dedication. From showing up every day, even when no one was watching, her imagination became an important part of her practice. She pictured herself playing for audiences, though she never dared to tell anyone. She imagined faces filled with admiration, teachers looking surprised, classmates applauding. The thought made her heart race, but she pushed it aside. For now, the room was enough. The piano was enough. She only needed to play. Music also became a way to release the pressure of school life. After a day of whispers, laughter, and judgment, she could sit alone and pour everything into sound. Each key held a memory, a frustration, or a hope. She discovered that music could carry weight, and she could let it go. She learned that silence and sound could exist together, that one could be full without the other being empty. Occasionally, she imagined someone stepping into the room and watching her. She imagined their surprise, maybe even awe. These thoughts were thrilling, but dangerous. She quickly reminded herself that no one must know yet. The piano was private, and privacy was safety. She had to protect this space until she felt ready. The more she practiced, the more she noticed details she had never understood before. How the pedals affected sound, how the touch of the fingers could change tone, how silence between notes could create meaning. She realized that the piano was more than an instrument. It was a partner. She and the piano worked together, creating something neither could produce alone. Sometimes, she became aware of her own transformation. The quiet, anxious girl who had entered the room weeks ago was changing. She held herself differently, with more attention to detail, more confidence in her movements. Music had given her a small power, not over others, but over herself. She began to feel capable, even in the absence of recognition. Her connection with the piano grew into a kind of dialogue. When she was frustrated, the piano could be harsh, each note sharp and difficult. When she was joyful, it responded with flowing melodies. She learned to listen, not just to the music, but to herself. Each session became a conversation, a way to understand feelings she could not name. She also learned patience. Not everything came easily, and sometimes her fingers faltered. She had to repeat passages countless times, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. But repetition was not punishment. It was discovery. She found satisfaction in small improvements, and gradually, the music that once seemed random became organized and expressive. Sometimes, she left the music room and walked through empty hallways, replaying melodies in her mind. The world felt less heavy when she carried music inside herself. Even the teasing from classmates, the low expectations of teachers, seemed distant, almost irrelevant. The music had become her shelter and her shield. She also began to imagine her future in quiet ways. Not fame, not applause, but the idea that she could express herself freely without fear. Each note she learned, each rhythm she mastered, was a step toward that possibility. It was an idea she clung to tightly, a hope she would not speak of, yet it gave her strength. Her secret practice became a ritual. She returned to the piano every day after school, rain or shine, tired or full of energy. The routine itself brought a sense of security. Each session was a promise to herself, a small commitment that she would keep growing no matter what happened in the outside world, even as her skill improved. She never played for recognition. The idea of performing in front of others terrified her. Her joy was in the act itself, the intimate connection with the piano. She was learning to trust her own abilities before risking them in public. This patience would serve her later. She did not know it yet. But she was building a foundation stronger than applause. Sometimes the room felt empty in a way that made her heart ache. She wished someone could see, someone could understand. But she reminded herself that this was not the time. The piano needed to know her first, to accept her fully before anyone else could. She trusted the instrument, and in return, it seemed to trust her. As the weeks passed, she grew stronger, more assured in her abilities. Her fingers moved faster, her memory sharper. She could play longer pieces without hesitation. And though she never spoke about it, she began to feel a quiet pride, not the kind that seeks attention, but the kind that comes from knowing you have worked for something and earned it yourself. And so, she continued. Every day after the last footsteps faded, she entered the music room and let the piano speak. Every note was a small victory, every melody a piece of her soul set free. It was a secret world, fragile and precious, but it was hers. And though no one else knew yet, she was preparing for a future where her hidden talent could not stay hidden forever. The day arrived slowly, almost unnoticed at first. She walked into the music classroom like she had done countless times before, carrying her books and her quiet presence. The teacher had called for volunteers to demonstrate a rhythm exercise on the piano. Some students laughed, eager to show off what they could do. She did not think of herself. She had no intention of standing out, no desire for attention. She had always hidden, and hiding had become comfortable. But then, for reasons she did not fully understand, her hand lifted slightly, almost involuntarily. Her classmates noticed it immediately and laughed quietly, whispering to one another. The room seemed to shift its focus toward her, and a rush of panic traveled up her spine. She tried to pull her hand back, but it was too late. The teacher had seen, and there was a hint of curiosity in the eyes directed at her. She approached the piano slowly, each step heavy with anxiety. Her classmates snickered softly, imagining her failure, waiting for the awkward mistakes they expected. She felt her heart pounding, hands trembling. This was the moment she had never prepared for, the moment she had feared. She sat down on the worn bench, her eyes briefly scanning the yellowed keys. Everything around her seemed to fade. The whispers, the laughter. The teacher's curious gaze, they all disappeared as she focused on the instrument she had, known in silence for so long. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Unsure, but then she remembered the hours she had spent alone. The countless repetitions, the melodies that had become part of her. Slowly, carefully, she pressed the first key. A soft sound emerged, tentative but clear. She continued, letting the flow guide her, letting her years of private practice speak for her. Each note carried the patience, frustration, and hope she had poured into the piano over time. The room grew quiet. At first, a few students giggled nervously, unsure of what they were hearing. But the sounds continued, growing in confidence and depth. Her fingers moved with precision, rhythm, and emotion she had never allowed anyone to witness before. The music seemed to reach out, filling the space, wrapping around the walls, and lingering in the air. It was no longer just sound. It was expression, alive and unconic. Her classmates froze. The teacher's eyes widened slightly, surprise crossing the face that had so often overlooked her. The laughter had vanished. They had expected mistakes, awkward pauses, hesitations, but nothing came. Instead, they heard skill, emotion, and mastery. Her music told a story they had never imagined. They realized slowly that the quiet girl they had mocked carried a talent that was extraordinary, hidden beneath years of silence. She played without thinking, letting instinct and memory guide her fingers. The piano seemed to respond to her, the notes flowing seamlessly. It was as though she and the instrument had merged, creating a sound neither could produce alone. She could feel the energy in the room shifting, a tension turning into awe. A room filled with people who had doubted now, captivated by her skill. The fear she had felt moments ago melted into focus. Each key a lifeline to her courage. By the time she finished, the room was still. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the teacher, usually composed, was silent, processing what had just happened. Her classmates stared, wide-eyed, as if they were seeing her for the first time. The snickers, the whispers, the judgment, all of it had vanished. In its place was an unspoken recognition of something extraordinary. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a quiet girl at the back of the room, but as someone capable, talented, and real. The reaction was subtle at first. A few students clapped softly, uncertain. Then others followed, gaining courage as they realized this was not a fluke. The teacher nodded slowly, a small smile forming. Words of praise finally emerged, gentle and careful, but sincere. They spoke of technique, of emotion, of precision. They asked questions, wanting to know how she had learned. She remained quiet, only smiling faintly, aware that the music had spoken for her in a way words never could. Her classmates, once dismissive, now approached her with curiosity. Questions that would have been unthinkable days ago were asked. What inspired her? How did she learn? Could she teach them? She answered with small nods, a soft voice that carried confidence she had not known before. The balance of power had shifted subtly, a quiet respect replacing ridicule. Her presence was no longer background. It had become central. The experience was transformative. She returned to the piano after class, alone, replaying the moments in her mind. She realized that the fear she had carried for so long was powerful, but it could be overcome. Music had given her courage, but it was also teaching her about trust, resilience, and the quiet strength that comes from dedication. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It needed patience, persistence, and a willingness to face fear. Over the next few days, she noticed small changes. Teachers spoke differently to her, offering encouragement she had never received. Classmates nodded respectfully in hallways, some even asking her opinion or advice. The whispers of ridicule faded, replaced by murmurs of curiosity and admiration. She walked with a slightly lighter step, aware of her own worth, though she remained humble. Recognition was not the goal, but it was a welcome byproduct. She also felt something new inside herself, a deeper connection with her music. It was no longer just an escape. It had become a bridge between herself and the world. She realized that sharing her talent, even in this small moment, had power beyond sound. It had the ability to change perceptions, to command attention, to communicate what words could not. This understanding gave her a sense of responsibility she had not felt before. Her private practice continued, but now, with a different energy. She experimented more boldly, confident that she could express herself in ways others would hear and understand. She tried more complex pieces, exploring dynamics and tempo with curiosity. She allowed herself small mistakes, seeing them not as failures but as opportunities to learn. Her connection with the piano deepened, a silent partnership that grew stronger with each session. She also became aware of her emotional growth. The fear that had once paralyzed her was still present, but it no longer controlled her. She could feel nervousness before playing, but it was accompanied by excitement and anticipation. The music became a way to channel her feelings, to understand and release them safely. It was a dialogue, not just with the instrument, but with herself. Her classmates' respect was new territory. Some approached her with genuine curiosity, others with caution, unsure of how to interact. She responded with quiet confidence, not arrogance, but a calm assurance that she belonged in the space she had always occupied but had never been seen in. The subtle shift in perception was thrilling, though she did not seek it. Recognition, she realized, was a reflection of her own inner strength. Not the source of it. She began to notice that the music room itself seemed different. It no longer felt like a place of isolation, but a stage, a space where she could stand, at least for a moment, without fear. Each visit to the piano became a practice, not just of skill, but of courage. She allowed herself to imagine playing in front of an audience, though the idea was still frightening. The thought planted a seed, one that would grow slowly, quietly, over time. Her teachers observed her in new ways. The ones who had overlooked her before now paid attention, curious about her potential. They asked her to demonstrate techniques, to help with group exercises, to explain concepts. She answered, sometimes nervously, sometimes confidently, discovering that teaching others reinforced her own understanding. Her voice, once quiet and hesitant, gained strength through these interactions. Meanwhile, her peers continued to adjust. Some were inspired by her talent, some envious, and others uncertain. She navigated these dynamics with care, not wanting to become the center of gossip or rivalry. She focused on the music, on the lessons, on the small victories that mattered more than approval. Yet she felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that she had shifted the perception of those who had doubted her. The music had given her more than skill. It had given her identity. For the first time, she understood that she was not just the quiet girl at the back of the classroom. She was capable, expressive, and real. The experience had shown her that patience, practice, and courage could transform perception, both others and her own. She felt a sense of accomplishment not from applause, but from the knowledge that she had faced fear and emerged stronger. As the day ended, she returned to the piano alone, replaying the moment in her mind. Each note she struck was filled with reflection and quiet pride. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, hours of secret practice. The solitude she had endured, the fear she had faced, it had all led to this one moment, one performance that changed how the world saw her. She felt grateful for the struggle, for the patience, for the music that had guided her. And so the girl who had been ridiculed learned a powerful truth. Talent, hidden though it might be, has a way of revealing itself at the right moment. Courage, born from years of silence, can carry a person through fear. Respect once denied can be earned quietly and powerfully. She sat there, fingers resting on the keys, knowing that this was only the beginning. The world had glimpsed her skill, but the journey of discovery, both for herself and for those who would watch her, had just begun. The music room felt different that morning. There was an unusual quietness, a sense of anticipation lingering in the air. She entered as usual, carrying her books and a small notebook with scribbled melodies. The teacher announced a surprise activity. Students could volunteer to perform a piece of music in front of the class. A few hands shot up eagerly, ready to showcase their efforts. She remained seated, observing, her stomach twisting with nervousness. Public performance had always been her greatest fear, and the thought of all eyes on her made her chest tighten. As the teacher called for volunteers, a few students stepped forward, performing simple rhythms and songs. Some received polite claps, others a few words of encouragement, but the majority of the class barely noticed. She watched, heart pounding, feeling a mixture of fear and longing. The piano, her trusted companion, sat silently in its corner, waiting. She remembered the countless afternoons spent alone, discovering notes, learning rhythms, and shaping melodies. Every key held a memory of patience, frustration, and quiet determination. Her hands itched to play. She imagined the piano responding to her touch, as it always had. Slowly, almost unconsciously, her hand lifted. A few students noticed and smirked, whispering among themselves. They expected another awkward attempt, a failure to match the confident performance of others. She felt their eyes and the weight of past ridicule pressing down on her. But she forced herself to take a deep breath and step forward. The teacher gestured toward the piano, a hint of curiosity in the expression. She hesitated, fingers trembling as she settled onto the bench. The room fell silent, all attention shifting to her. Her heart raced, threatening to drown out her thoughts. But she reminded herself of the hours of practice, the patience, and the silent growth she had achieved. The piano had taught her to trust herself. Now, it was time to let the music speak. She pressed the first key gently, the sound filling the room with a soft, pure tone. Her fingers moved with precision, carefully forming a melody that had been in her mind for weeks. Each note flowed naturally, a rhythm that carried emotion and depth. The room, once filled with whispers and expectations, became silent in awe. The students who had mocked her just moments before now watched with wide eyes, captivated by the unexpected mastery before them. Her hands moved faster, more confidently, navigating complex passages with skill and grace. She played pieces she had created herself, blending emotion and technique seamlessly. The music seemed alive, rising and falling with intensity. carrying the story of her struggle, perseverance, and hidden talent. She felt a strange freedom, a sense of connection, not just with the piano but with everyone listening. For the first time, she realized that the music could communicate what words never could. Some students shifted in their seats, unable to hide their surprise. Even the teacher, who had always viewed her as quiet and unremarkable, could not help but show signs of amazement. The sound was more than technique. It was emotion, skill, and a depth of feeling that resonated deeply. The music filled the room, transforming it from a simple classroom into a space of wonder and discovery. As she played, she began to lose track of herself. There was no fear, no embarrassment, only the piano and the flow of music. She allowed her fingers to explore, creating variations, adding subtle nuances, experimenting with tempo and dynamics. Each note carried her personality, her hidden thoughts, and her resilience. The room seemed to hold its breath, completely absorbed in the unexpected brilliance of her performance. When the final note faded, the room was still for a moment, suspended in disbelief. Then, slowly, a few students clapped, hesitantly at first. The applause grew, becoming genuine and appreciative. The teacher smiled, nodding, acknowledging not only her skill, but the courage it had taken to perform. The class that had once ignored her, mocked her, or overlooked her, now looked at her with a new understanding. She had not only played music, she had changed their perception entirely. She felt a mixture of relief, pride, and humility. The performance was not about recognition, though the acknowledgement was satisfying. It was about expressing herself, revealing a part of who she was that had remained hidden for so long. She realized that her music had the power to bridge the gap between her inner world and the outside, allowing others to see a glimpse of her true self. After class, several students approached her, asking questions about the techniques she had used, the pieces she had played, and how she had learned. She answered softly, sharing small insights without revealing all the hours of private practice that had shaped her skill. The interactions were awkward at first, but she felt a quiet satisfaction. For once, she was not invisible. For once, her talent demanded attention and respect. Her confidence began to grow, though cautiously. She returned to the piano after school, not just to practice but to experiment, to explore new melodies and to challenge herself. The room that had once been her refuge now felt like a stage, a place where she could express herself fully without fear. The music became a tool for understanding not only her own emotions but the impact she could have on others. She also began to reflect on the journey that had brought her to this point. The ridicule, the whispers, and the dismissive glances had all shaped her in ways that made this moment possible. They had forced her to practice in silence, to develop resilience, and to cultivate patience. Without the challenges, she might never have discovered the depth of her own talent or the power of her courage. Over time, her presence in the classroom subtly shifted. Teachers who had once overlooked her began to involve her more, asking her to demonstrate techniques or provide input during lessons. Classmates began to acknowledge her quietly, some with curiosity, others with admiration. The balance of power had shifted not through confrontation but through the quiet demonstration of skill, persistence, and courage. Her relationship with the piano deepened as well. She explored more complex pieces, experimenting with rhythm, dynamics, and emotional expression. She allowed herself to make mistakes, understanding that errors were part of the learning process. The instrument became not just a tool for practice but a partner in discovery, a confidant that responded to her thoughts and feelings in ways no one else could. She also discovered that the impact of her music extended beyond the classroom. Small performances in music club or informal gatherings revealed the same pattern: initial surprise, followed by genuine appreciation. She noticed how music could command attention, shift perceptions, and create moments of connection. The power of her talent was not just in technical skill but in its ability to communicate emotion and authenticity. Her own growth continued quietly. She learned to balance humility with confidence, understanding that recognition was valuable but not the goal. The true reward was the development of skill, the expression of emotion, and the courage to share a piece of herself with the world. Each performance, no matter how small, reinforced this understanding. She began to imagine the possibilities for the future. She no longer saw herself solely as the quiet, overlooked girl at the back of the classroom. She saw potential, opportunity, and the ability to make an impact. The piano had revealed not just her talent, but her resilience, patience, and inner strength. These qualities, cultivated in silence and solitude, prepared her for challenges and triumphs yet to come. The experience also changed her perception of others. She understood that judgment often stemmed from ignorance or fear, not malice. The same classmates who had once mocked her were now capable of admiration and respect. This realization fostered empathy, a deeper understanding of human behavior, and a desire to remain grounded despite newfound recognition. Her afternoons continued to be spent in the music room. Each session, a blend of practice, experimentation, and reflection. She tried new compositions, explored different styles, and challenged herself to convey emotion in increasingly nuanced ways. The piano became both teacher and mirror, reflecting her growth and encouraging further exploration. The journey was ongoing. Each day brought new challenges, new pieces to master, and new opportunities to connect with others through music. The transformation from ridicule to respect was not instantaneous but gradual, marked by small victories, persistent effort, and moments of courage. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It required patience, practice, and the willingness to face fear, and so she continued to play. Each note was a statement, a reflection of her journey, and a promise to herself. The music carried the story of her perseverance, resilience, and quiet strength. It had the power to change perceptions, build connections, and reveal the hidden depths of her character. The piano had become her voice, and through it, she learned the value of courage, the impact of talent, and the power of being seen. The following days brought a new reality for her. Walking into the school, she noticed the subtle changes in the way people looked at her. The whispers and laughter had faded, replaced by a quiet respect she had never experienced. Some students nodded or smiled as she passed, and teachers greeted her with warmth and interest. It was a small shift, almost imperceptible, but to her, it meant the world. She felt a sense of belonging that had always eluded her, a validation not based on words but on recognition of her talent and dedication. In the music room, she continued to practice with a renewed sense of purpose. Each note carried more than just melody. It carried the experience of every challenge she had faced. Her fingers moved confidently over the keys, blending technical skill with emotion. She experimented with new compositions, trying different rhythms and dynamics, exploring the limits of her abilities. The piano was no longer just a tool for practice. It was a partner, a confidant, and a source of empowerment. She began to notice the impact her music had on others. Teachers occasionally paused to listen, their expressions filled with genuine admiration. Classmates who had once ignored her now asked questions, sought advice, or simply listened quietly during practice sessions. The respect she received was different from applause or praise. It was rooted in understanding, acknowledgement of the effort and skill she had cultivated in silence. This growing recognition did not change her humility. She remained grounded, aware that her journey was still ongoing. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It required continued effort, perseverance, and a willingness to learn. Each day in the music room became an opportunity to refine her craft, to explore new ideas, and to deepen her connection with the piano. She learned that mastery was a process, not a destination, and that patience was as important as skill. Her confidence began to manifest in other areas of life as well. She participated more actively in classes, offering answers when appropriate and contributing to discussions. The transformation was subtle but noticeable. She still valued quiet reflection and observation, but she no longer allowed fear of judgment to dictate her actions. The courage she had found through music began to influence her interactions, giving her a sense of agency and self-assurance. In music club meetings, she started to share her ideas and techniques with others. Students who had once doubted her now listened intently, eager to learn from her insight. She discovered that teaching others reinforced her own understanding and boosted her confidence. Her voice, once soft and hesitant, gained clarity and strength. She realized that sharing knowledge was not a vulnerability, but a way to connect and inspire. Outside the classroom, her reputation continued to grow quietly. Peers began to approach her with curiosity, asking about her compositions, practice routines, and inspirations. Some were inspired by her dedication, while others admired her skill. She navigated these interactions with care, maintaining her humility while accepting genuine appreciation. The balance of recognition and self-awareness became a new source of satisfaction. Her parents began to notice changes as well. At home, she spoke more openly about her experiences and accomplishments, though still modestly. They expressed pride and amazement at her growth, recognizing not just her talent, but her resilience and determination. Their support added another layer of encouragement, reinforcing the positive cycle of effort, recognition, and confidence. One afternoon, the school announced a small performance for students interested in showcasing their musical talents. She felt a familiar wave of nervousness, but also a spark of excitement. The idea of playing in front of an audience was daunting, yet she felt prepared in a way she had never been before. The hours of private practice, the experiments with rhythm and emotion, and the gradual building of confidence had prepared her for this moment. When the day arrived, she took her place at the piano with a calm awareness. The audience included students, teachers, and a few parents. She began to play, each note deliberate, flowing naturally, filled with the emotion and skill she had cultivated over years. The music captured attention immediately, drawing listeners into the melodies and harmonies she had carefully constructed. It was a performance not of showiness, but of authenticity, revealing her dedication and the depth of her talent. As the final note resonated through the room, the response was immediate and heartfelt. Applause filled the space, sincere and appreciative. Teachers praised her technique, her emotional expression, and her courage to perform. Students looked at her with admiration, many approaching afterward to express their amazement. She felt a mix of pride, humility, and gratitude. The moment validated years of effort and silent dedication. It's not because of fame, but because her talent and courage had finally been recognized. The experience reinforced a vital lesson. True respect is earned through dedication, perseverance, and authenticity. It is not given lightly, nor is it dependent solely on recognition from others. It grows from within, from the willingness to face fear, embrace challenges, and cultivate skill and character over time. She understood that the journey from ridicule to respect was not about instant transformation, but about consistent effort and integrity. In the weeks that followed, she continued to play and explore music with renewed purpose. She took on more challenging pieces, experimented with composition, and occasionally shared her work with peers and teachers. Each performance, no matter how small, reinforced her confidence and sense of identity. Music had become not just a talent, but a means of self-expression, personal growth, and connection with others. Her life at school had transformed subtly but profoundly. Ridicule had been replaced by respect, fear by confidence, and isolation by a sense of belonging. She remained humble, aware that growth is ongoing and that every challenge offers an opportunity to learn. The recognition she received was no longer the goal. It was a reflection of the inner strength and dedication she had nurtured over the years. She also learned empathy through her journey. Understanding how it felt to be overlooked or mocked made her more considerate toward others. She noticed peers who struggled, who were quiet, or who were dismissed, and she offered encouragement or support when appropriate. Her experiences had not only shaped her musical skill, but also her character. Fostering compassion and awareness, the piano remained her anchor. Each session was a reminder of the path she had traveled, from hidden practice in solitude to public recognition of her skill. It represented perseverance, courage, and the transformative power of dedication. Through it, she discovered her voice, her confidence, and the ability to influence others positively. The instrument was more than a tool. It was a partner in her journey of growth. Looking back, she realized how far she had come. The girl who once sat quietly at the back of the classroom, overlooked and mocked, had transformed through patience, practice, and courage. Her talent had been hidden for years, but it had always been there, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The journey had been as important as the achievement, shaping not just her skills, but her identity and perspective. She understood that respect, once denied, could be earned through dedication, authenticity, and courage. Her story was not about instant recognition, but about the quiet, persistent effort that eventually revealed her true abilities. She felt a sense of fulfillment, not because of applause or praise, but because she had faced fear, remained committed, and allowed her hidden talent to emerge in its own time. And so, she continued each day building on her progress, exploring new musical horizons and embracing the opportunities that came her way. The journey from ridicule to respect had transformed her, not only in the eyes of others, but, more importantly, in her own understanding of her worth, her talent, and her potential. She knew that the path ahead would have challenges, but she faced them with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing one's strength, skill, and resilience. Her music would continue to speak, and through it, she would continue to be seen, heard, and respected.